Warning: this video contains images and references to historical events that may be traumatizing to some viewers. Discretion is advised. The Hedonic Treadmill. What is it? It's a concept that's been gaining in popularity recently.
Hedonic Treadmill.
The Hedonic Treadmill.
The Hedonic Wheel.
But before we can answer the question of what the Hedonic Treadmill is, we have to take a trip back in time. It's 1942 Nazi Germany, and PhD Psychologist Viktor Frankl has just been arrested by the SS and sent off to a concentration camp for being Jewish. Over the next 3 years, Frankl's entire family, including his brother, wife, and parents, would perish at Auschwitz at the hands of the Nazis in their incredibly inhumane concentration camps. Surviving the camps, Viktor Frankl himself would be finally liberated in 1945. Only 1 year later, in 1946, Frankl would release his best-selling book, Man's Search for Meaning, a hybrid between a memoir and biography of his experiences in the camp, but also the foray into his theory on logotherapy. There's something very interesting about Frankl's book. Despite it being about the brutal conditions and near-death experiences he had living at Auschwitz, the word happy appears in the book over 25 times. It seems odd for words like that to appear so frequently in a book about one of humanity's most grotesque and inhumane and cruel events. But the entire book is full of stories of friendship and moments of laughter or moments of comfort or moments of joy or happiness. How is that? Whether Frankl was talking about getting an extra ration of food or a friend telling a joke, there are so many little pockets of joy in the story, and those really stand out. Frankl said, "Long after I had resumed normal life again, that means a long time after release from the camp, somebody showed me an illustrated weekly with photographs of prisoners lying crowded in their bunks, staring dully at a visitor. Isn't this terrible? The dreadful staring faces, everything about it." "Why?" I asked, for I genuinely did not understand. At that moment, I saw it all again. The 5 a.m., still pitch black outside. I was laying on the hard boards in an earthen hut where about 70 of us were taken care of. We were sick and did not have to leave camp for work. We did not have to go on parade. We could lie around all day in our little corner in the hut and daze and wait for the daily distribution of bread, which of course was reduced for us because we were sick, and for the daily helping of soup, watered down and also decreased in quantity. But how content we were, happy in spite of everything, while we cowered against each other to avoid any unnecessary loss of warmth. We heard shrill whistles and shouts from the square where the night shift had just returned. The door was flung open, and the snowstorm blew into our hut. An exhausted comrade, covered with snow, stumbled inside to sit down for a few minutes, but the senior warden turned him out again. It was strictly forbidden to admit a stranger to a hut while a checkup on men was in progress. How sorry I was for that fellow, and how glad not to be in his skin at that moment. Similarly, Primo Levi's memoir, If This Is a Man, has similar stories about unbreakable friendships being formed, or little games that the prisoners would play with one another, or little underground markets that existed when they were hiding away from the prison guards. Despite the absolutely brutal conditions that these people were living in, they were still able to find happiness and joy. Although not as extreme as an example, this is similar to the joy and happiness that you find in cultures all over the world living in what most Americans would consider poverty or conditions that they would be appalled to themselves live in. But that doesn't stop children from playing and laughing, or families loving each other, or communities coming together to celebrate things. In the case of Levi and Frankl, these men were stripped of everything that they owned and nearly stripped of their lives, and yet they were still able to find happiness and joy in life. That's because the things that really mattered stood out more in those situations. So when we understand how trauma and misfortune can make us have more gratitude for the things that really matter, we can then understand the hedonic treadmill, and that having more and more and more has the opposite effect. Opulence makes us hungrier for more opulence. The term hedonic treadmill stems from the philosophy of hedonism, which is a lifestyle or outlook where you are constantly seeking pleasure. You think that life is all about maximizing pleasure. So the hedonic treadmill is the concept that whenever you reach a goal, whether that be making a certain amount of money or owning a particular item or being with a certain partner, we quickly adapt to that level of happiness that thing brought us, and then we want more. This idea was first brought to light in the early 70s by researchers Philip Brickman and Donald T. Campbell. I think a lot of Americans can probably relate to going through this experience. You want to buy a new car, and you go out and get it, you spend all this money on it, you get yourself into debt for it, and it's amazing to drive for a week, maybe a month, maybe even 6 months, but eventually the awesomeness of it kind of wears off and you are already starting to think, ooh, maybe I should get another car, or maybe I can put more money into this car to make it faster or to make it look cooler. The same thing often happens with people's salaries. They think if I can just get to X amount of dollars, then I will be happy. I will be living the life that I want to live. But shockingly, over half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and that includes individuals who have an income of over $100,000 a year. And that's because as people make more money, they then spend more money. They are on that hedonic treadmill. They are constantly wanting more and more and more and more. So this constant pursuit of more actually will make you more miserable in the long run because you are constantly fixated on things that you don't have or you can't have. This is known as the pleasure paradox in hedonism. If you are a hedonist, you are constantly seeking more things or a better life. You are always going to be wanting that next level that you don't yet have, and it will make you focus on the things you don't have and make you feel bad because of it. This is why gratitude is so powerful, because then you are focusing on the things that are going right in your life. And your attitude is so incredibly important. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to avoid trauma or obstacles in our life, or that we shouldn't strive for things that we want. But I do think that people get caught up in these attitudes of always wanting more. It's a very American problem for sure. A great example of how our attitude can affect our happiness is when I first started my business in 2015, I had some clients cancel their contracts with me, and I was freaking out thinking, this is the end of my business, everything's going wrong. And I was so spread thin that I wasn't really doing a great job of tracking everything and seeing what was coming in, what was going out for business. And when I finally sat down and tracked how we were doing as far as gaining clients versus losing clients, I realized that we were on a very steep upward trajectory. And that it was because I was so focused on the clients we had lost that I had this terrible attitude. I felt miserable. I was depressed. I thought my business was failing. And life in general is that way. If we focus on the good things in our life, we are going to feel happier most of the time. And if we focus on the negative things, we're going to think that everything in our life is going wrong. So my advice to you to deal with this constant battle with always wanting more is twofold. Number one, exercise some patience. If you think that buying that new pair of shoes or that new phone is going to make you happy, realize that it's probably not, and just wait for that urge of wanting that thing to pass you by, and you'll probably forget about it. And the second thing is gratitude. And I know that a big thing on the internet is to do gratitude journaling, and I think that's fine, but there's nothing wrong with just simply mentally taking stock of what's going right in your life, what's good in your life, appreciating those around you, letting the people that you do appreciate know that you appreciate them. It'll go a long way. Viktor Frankl himself is famous for saying in his book and other writings that even though the Nazis controlled everything in his life while he was in that concentration camp, the one thing they couldn't control was his attitude towards what was happening to it, his reaction to the things that were happening in his life. And that is the ultimate control. And you don't have to wait until life throws you a huge traumatic event or obstacle to appreciate what you have around you. If you are interested in learning more about the personal experiences of those who survived the Holocaust, I do strongly recommend Primo Levi's book, If This Is a Man. I'll put a link in the description below. This is The On Life. Thank you so much for watching, and you will see me in the next video.